riveting highlight reel to intro the show. Welcome in, everyone, to the 5 Sports Show. Atticus, Pead, Cam Murray alongside me. Cam, I ran out of sad pictures there at the end. Didn't have enough to fill on our social media graphics. As Kevin Butcher says on our Facebook, you better stock up on the sad pics because the future doesn't look too bright right now for the Mountaineers. Yeah. Kevin, I hate to say it, you might be right, my friend. Cam.
I kind of agree with Kevin too, but I think it's one of the classic stories. Your emotional win against your rival, and then you have all that confidence going into this next game, first Big 12 game of the year, and just falls flat. I think it was it was disappointing to see. I think since what we saw from last week, of course, without Jaheim White, without some other star players on offense, we expected the same kind of product from last week, but the offense just never really got going in tonight's game.
You know, I found myself, I went back home as the game started, and I watched the first couple plays on the couch, and I found myself eating cookie dough out of a tub with a spork.
Oh,
and
man.
I realized at that moment, I was like, hey, you know the stereotype. Your girls, your wife, your girlfriend, whatever, when they're sad, my wife affirmed this with me, so I feel comfortable saying this. But she said, sometimes when you feel sad, you grab the whole tub of ice cream, you get the spoon out, you sit on the couch, you eat it in depression, that kind of thing. So I felt that sense of deja vu as I was sitting there eating my cookie dough on the couch. I thought, boy, Kansas scored quickly. It's 7-0 in the first 2 minutes. And I immediately thought, oh boy, this might be a bit of a bad one.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be that way pretty quick.
The first touchdown, seeing just how wide open, that player was to get that touchdown first of all. And then after that touchdown, West Virginia 3 straight 3-and-outs going out of the first quarter. And I mean, the offense just was not getting going at all in that first quarter or throughout most of the game. And I think we're going to look at the quarterbacks, we're going to look at the play calling, but it's really the offensive line, I feel like. I think this offensive line is taking a little bit too long of a time to mesh and get to know the system, get to know the quarterbacks who are playing behind them, because we're seeing a lot of times, Nico Markell's seeing 4 guys in his face just rushing right after him trying to make a pass. And there's guys coming untouched into the pocket. So, I think there's a lot of blame to go around, and not going to single blame on just the offensive line unit, but there was a lot of tough plays that could have been maybe saved if the offensive line would have held up a little bit longer or identified some guys rushing the passer. There was quite frequently in that first quarter we saw them under duress a lot, and it really was the reason why it slowed down their offense.
And there's your age-old question, if you will. At what point does it become just time to mesh versus talent? I'm not sure, like you mentioned, I don't know if the offensive line has enough of it to be able to hand up against the big competition. And it's not like Kansas is some magical, grand Big 12 team. I mean, it's Kansas. They're better. They're not Utah or Texas Tech. I should say Texas Tech, not Utah. But I mean, you know what I mean. It's not exactly the best team out there. So this was a pretty big surprise. Now, I had said all week that West Virginia was going to get destroyed by Kansas, 3 or 4 scores. Didn't think it would look like that, but I did think that Kansas was going to win. Like you mentioned at the start, rivalry bounce after that. It's just hard to come back from that after those big rivalry wins at home. And that certainly turned out that way. I mean, when did the offense wake up? Late in the second quarter, kind of?
Sort of. Getting some good plays.
Henderson came in?
Yeah, and that's another thing we can go on as well. Fourth quarter, obviously, you get that touchdown with Henderson, which is a great drive engineered by him, but it just seemed like just too little too late. The spark and bringing in multiple quarterbacks, at that point in the game, I mean, it was almost like, and Kansas answered right back with a touchdown of their own right after, so kind of negated whatever the success West Virginia had. But, yeah, just all around kind of just disappointing from the offense perspective.
That's a good point. And we're a month into the season now, and I think we've discovered something very clear here. You all know the saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And on the broadcast today, the color commentator mentioned if you have 5 quarterbacks, it's something I can't say on air. And I sort of feel like now we've discovered that's really what the truth is.
Yeah.
West Virginia has 5 quarterbacks because they don't have a single one out there. And it's really obvious. You know how it is with college practices and whatnot. They guard these practices like the plague. Cam, you at the 1, and then they didn't really want you back after that.
Right.
It's just you just don't see a whole lot of practice time as part of the media, local media, whatever, and that's okay. It's college football. You want to hide what you're looking to do. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. We're not complaining about that. That's just the way it is in the world. But the problem becomes now, we come into the season, we think game 1, all right, Nico Markell's probably the good starting quarterback. He's good enough to do it. Clearly, he's not. And it's no wonder that Rich Rodriguez has not named him the starting quarterback and never really has definitively said, he's our QB1 since week 1, or ever really. Because if this is what he's seeing in practice, well, no wonder. I mean, this is just not good enough, not just from Nico Markell, but just in general. There's just clearly no one who's taking the mantle here.
Yeah, it seems like there's things that each quarterback does really well that if it was combined into one quarterback, that would obviously be the QB1. That's why I feel like the Oars are so common in the depth chart. It's like, they believe Nico Markell is the best passer. They believe Jalen Henderson is one of the best runners. Scotty Fox as well in kind of that same category. But they don't have a guy that can really do it all for them. That's sort of holding them back. But, they still have plenty more games this season to kind of figure it out and work through it. 4 games in, it seems like it worked against Robert Morris. It did seem like it did. Backyard brawl. Maybe there were some questions. If they don't win that game, why would you take out Markiel? But they win that game. So at that point, it's like, well, maybe this thing is working. So you have 4 game sample size, 2 games it worked, 2 games maybe not so much, or 1.5, I guess you could say. And so I guess we can wait and see a little bit, but right now, obviously not looking great.
That's one of the strange things, too, about the game today compared to the backyard brawl. So Nico Markiel gets pulled, started the second half in the backyard brawl, and you're sort of sitting there at home thinking, really? I mean, only 7 points in the first half, but he's leading them on consistent drives that are, longer than just your 3 and outs. That's what you need to keep the defense off the field. It felt like tonight they could have used a quarterback spark way earlier than when Markiel was actually taken out deep in the third when the game was already lost. So I don't know, maybe it's no plan, maybe it's whatever. At the end of the day, I'm not really sure that it has to be a lack of a plan. Maybe it's just you really are just shooting in the dark here to see what quarterback can stick. And you felt like you had to give Markiel some time because he won the backyard brawl, even though he clearly didn't have it today. And at the end of the day, like you mentioned there, I'm not sure that anyone would succeed with this kind of offensive line and the talent around them. I mean, nobody's getting open. Yeah,
it's tough. And especially when you look at a guy like, on this offense, Cam Vaughn is the guy that's pretty much the premier pass catcher, the guy that obviously defense are looking to stop because he's the only guy pretty much able to get open, able to get separation. And today, the Kansas pretty much shut him down and shut up a lot of other wide receivers as well. But when you lose a guy like Jaheim White, we're going to keep saying it. He's kind of the guy that scared defenses to try to stop him and then maybe open some other guys up. Well, without him, it's just other guys trying to fill that role in. Obviously, right now, just not looking great. But, heading into the next game against Utah, just the Big 12 schedule is not getting easier. I guess what we're trying to say is it's not going to get easier throughout the season. You have, obviously, Arizona State, other teams on the schedule. It's not going to get easier. If this is what we start with, it's, a lot to work. You can work back from this, work up from this, but, long season ahead and a lot of tougher opponents ahead as well. That's really true. The conference play, you get to that, it's sort of like your fresh start, if you will. Not that West Virginia really needed that much of one. You felt great after the 2 wins out of conference. Would have wanted 3, but 2 not bad. But then you get here, and now you've lost to Kansas, and it was ugly. Now you got to come back and play Utah, who didn't look the best today against Texas Tech at all. Right. But do you think West Virginia is going to go put up more than 10 points on the Utah defense? I don't know. And then you've got BYU after that on the road, and then you've got Central Florida, who a lot of us thought was kind of bad, and then they just smacked North Carolina today, and who knows? So not to look too far into the future here, we want to focus on tonight first and foremost. But at the end of the day, like you mentioned, Cam, this isn't a great start. Going on from here, I trust the climb back down, perhaps? At least for this season, it seems. I think it's tough because people were saying it in the offseason. We kind of mentioned as well, all the new guys coming into this team, all the new system, people trying to learn it. Well, what's it going to look like? I don't want to go too far in the future, but what's it looking like next year? A lot of these guys might not return as well. A whole new system. It's going to be we had X amount of players coming in, a lot more than we had returning. They're trying to learn the system. Is this kind of going to be a revolving thing we hear? If they don't get the quality play, or they don't get the guys understanding now in this system to prepare them for next season, it seems like it's a tough road ahead. And that's one of the things I wonder about, too, in terms of, like, Fred Perry, for example. Fred Perry, I believe he's a senior off the top of my head. Played plenty of years, Jacksonville State. He's played for Rich Rodriguez before. That targeting that he got thrown out for, whether you think it's a targeting or not, it's a pretty heavy shot straight to the quarterback's head or neck. You're going to get thrown out for that kind of thing. You're a senior, you can't be doing that. This far into your career, you've got to know better than to do that sort of thing. And it just felt like, he's just catching up to the speed of play here in the Big 12. Clearly, Kansas is far better than Pittsburgh. And that's not meant as a slight against West Virginia. I think West Virginia's defense did, honestly, a really good job tonight up until the second half. When things just kind of fell apart. What can you do when your offense can't do anything, So at the end of the day, Kansas is obviously better. West Virginia's defense, I think, is still the best unit on the team. They showed that again today. But then there just comes a point in time where there just aren't enough difference makers all across the field to be able to handle touchdown after touchdown, point after point, scramble after scramble. We talked about Parker Navarro for Ohio being the kind of quarterback West Virginia couldn't handle. Well, Jalen Daniels is a lot better, and he showed pretty quick. West Virginia is not going to be able to handle quarterbacks who can move, and that's a problem because pretty much every quarterback in the Big 12 can move. I agree with that, but kind of going on that, when the defense is when the offense is having trouble moving the ball downfield, they're getting off the field in only 3 plays, 4 plays, 5 plays, only having a short amount of time on their drives. The defense is having to go on the field, and maybe they're playing really well in the first half, tired, and they're getting tired out because they're always in the field, always trying to defend Kansas because the offense just can't get anything going. And even though the defense is the best unit, looking deeper in the season, I just don't see that being a sustainable system for West Virginia to rely on their defense to stop teams from scoring 30, 40 points. If West Virginia can't keep up with that, I think it has to look at the offense, obviously, at how we can get better to score more points to help our defense out, take rest, take time to take a breather. I mean, I don't know what the time possession was. I assume it's more for Kansas, but
33 minutes 50 seconds. Kansas 26 West Virginia.
So exactly. I mean, when you have to be on the field for that amount of time, defensively, I feel like that's a struggling. Just shows the struggling for the offense, but got to figure out how to get that better.
And that's something that Rich Rodriguez isn't going to change his system. I don't think unnecessarily, of course.
Oh, yeah.
This is the system you all know from back in the good old days of West Virginia, up through Arizona, Michigan, and now. And this is the downside to that system. We've talked about it all week long, all year long, every single week. The offense cannot keep drives going long enough in order to keep the defense off the field to give them the time to rest. And so here we are now. So it's easy to say, yes, you should change that. Maybe that'd be a good thing, of course, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure the system is going to work without this kind of tempo or speed you're trying to do.
Right.
And it isn't like at the end of the day, the offensive output was the worst. I mean, you look at the stats, 388 yards for Kansas, 324 West Virginia. First downs, basically the same. So when you look at it statistically, it's not the worst thing in the world. But, I mean, you and I watched the game. You watched home watch the game. The eye test doesn't back up the stats.
It was just combining drives. I don't know what the number is right now. I know in the first quarter it was 2 of, I believe, 11 for first down or third down conversions, and obviously things like that. But I just, like you kind of mentioned it as well, not being able to defend the Parker Navarro, Dylan Daniels, and like you said, the quarterback's going to get better. It's going to be tough for West Virginia to come back at home next week. And if we're thinking that, if we really look at it, are we saying what West Virginia's roster, like roster versus roster, matching up against Kansas coming into this game? You obviously predicted Kansas to win. Did you believe that West Virginia's roster was on par with Kansas coming into this game?
No, not at all.
So when you look at the whole Big 12, what Big 12 team, and we can go back kind of into the depth charts and the teams and results and all the stats, but are there teams in the Big 12 that match up with West Virginia evenly in a sense that if West Virginia loses a game, people will be like, oh, how did you lose that game? I think people are getting a little bit confused here. If they're confused why they lost to Kansas, take a look at maybe the depth chart and the output we've seen from this season, because I don't think there's a lot of teams in the Big 12 that if West Virginia loses to, people would be upset by because their rosters are better than West Virginia right now through this time of the season.
Boy, that's a really good point. I didn't even think of this one. We didn't talk about any of this before we got on here today. I like this. I'm thinking UCF,
UCF,
Arizona, maybe? That's sort of it.
And even that, UCF's on their schedule, but BYU, obviously, we'd say would be better. I guess the game's going.
Utah as well. I mean, pretty much every team you're going to play, Texas Tech.
What is a game this season where fans would be upset? Like I get fans being upset losing by 31 points, but when you really break it down, I mean, Vegas told everyone what they thought the result was going to be. Obviously, when you look at the rosters, quarterback versus quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, coordinators, all that, it just seems like we have to find teams that match up with West Virginia well, and unfortunately on their schedule there's not many.
That's a good point when you think of the roster and the depth of talent too. I didn't think of this beforehand, but I'm thinking about the running back position first and foremost here. Who is the best running back on the field for West Virginia today? Jalen Henderson. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Quarterback.
Yeah.
That's it.
Statistically, yeah.
And if you think about that, I mean, Jaheim White obviously out for the season. What's the guy's name? C.J. Donaldson. Donaldson, really solid last year. He would have been your option 1 or option 2. He's gone to Ohio State. Really could have used him. Option 3 is clearly Ty Edwards. Ty Edwards' game time decision tonight didn't play after the backyard brawl last week after his breakout game, but couldn't go today. So now you're down to Clay Ash, and Clay Ash, 7 runs, 12 yards. You got Tyler Jacklick, 6 runs, 27 yards. Sincere Bowers, Orrin Singleton. I mean, you are just digging in the depths down there. You're on your 3rd and 4th and 5th options. And I mean, Jalen Henderson looks like he'd be your best runner, and you don't really have a quarterback. So at the end of the day, the skill talent is just offensively, and we talk about the offensive line, the talent from the skill players may just not be everything you need for Rich Rodriguez. And at the end of the day, like Cam's mentioning here, it is year 1. A lot of the rosters in the Big 12, we'd all say, are better than what West Virginia has. So this is not meant to be, this year did not need to be all or nothing. It can't look like this every game, of course. You still need to see, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can see bricks being laid every day, right? So you got to see something that's not this. But it is only game 4, and you did see the bricks already being built, the pit game.
So the pit game, 100%.
It's not like there's nothing to go off of here. It sounds bad when you focus on the one game, and it's terrible and awful and everything, but there is still plenty of time left, and it's only game 4, and you're 2-2. That's not awful.
Right. No, I agree with that. If losing that pit game would have been almost a death sentence for this season, coming into losing that game and then losing it like this against Kansas, even more disappointed than we are right now. But yeah, 2-2 going against Utah next Saturday.
And I think one thing you have to watch out for, too, going forward is West Virginia's defense was, like we've mentioned a few times here tonight, best unit on the field. They've been the best unit on the team throughout the entire season so far.
Yes.
And if you had said that before the year, your defense is going to be the best unit on the team, you would have jumped for joy and clapped your hands and said, yes, please, this is great.
Yes.
Because we all know that Rich Rodriguez can make an offense work. You just need the right guys. Clearly, he doesn't have the right guys this year. Okay, we'll move past that. We all know how he recruits. We all know how he coaches. He'll very likely get that right at some point. And if he doesn't, well, then he doesn't. But I think you bet on that more than you would a lot of other things. Getting the defense right is a very big deal in college football. And of course, 41 points to Kansas. We look at that and say they didn't get the defense right. But honestly, Zach Alley's defense has been far better than I think all of us would have thought. And it doesn't really have to come down to just yards and points and stats. At the end of the day, there's a defense you can trust out there to make stops. And again, it didn't really happen tonight. I think a lot of us are going to blame that. Cam, myself especially, blame that on the offense not stringing anything together. So at the end of the day, if your defense can continue to play like this and improve a little bit piece by piece as you go forward, this is a real team you could build because now you actually have a defense. Under Neil Brown, there never was one. Now I think there is at least a very strong pyramid of pieces there, even if it's not fully complete yet. And that's okay. So, good place to be.
Yeah, especially with, Zach Alley, like you kind of mentioned, great at getting his players ready to play in the right position to make tackles. And there was that run later in the game by Kansas, a lot of missed arm tackles, a lot of missed opportunities on that. But later in the game, obviously, and then a special teams touchdown, which obviously was just pretty nice run. I would say to give credit to Kansas, that was a pretty nice return. So minus that and minus a few miscommunications, the wide open pass, the first touchdown of the game. I don't know what he'll answer to that. I guess on Tuesday, and we'll figure that out from there. But from what we've seen so far, obviously to stop Pitt on the first play of the game to force that fumble, this defense seems like they're always ready to play, opportunistic. And like you said, a good brick to be building in the right direction. If you can get the defense right early and maybe with more players coming in, better roster in the future, Rich Rodriguez's offensive system will work as he hopes it to heading into the future.
I do have to admit with defense, though, it probably stung a little bit to see Trey Lathan getting that pick. Ex-West Virginia guy, you're doing that kind of thing against your old team.
Yeah.
Not great.
No. And they said on the broadcast, I'm sure he was like, seen it during practice, seen Mark y'all all the time during practice. And he's a great player. And we knew when he left West Virginia, we were losing a great player on defense.
Right.
He hurt us on that. But we have, they have other good players, Reed Carrico and the linebacker. But like you kind of said, right now, foundationally, with the coach, the coordinator, I think they're in the right position to improve, obviously, in the next few years.
Yeah, and that's what we'll be looking for here. And, of course, just, a lot of the guys coming back didn't have a huge impact. Chase Wilson, one of their best tacklers, and he just didn't really ever get in the backfield. And that was one of the bigger issues here, too. Whenever West Virginia would get the pressure on, get the pass rush on, it just didn't matter. Because if you got pressure with 4, Jalen Daniels is so good at escaping, you can just get outside the pocket and burn you anyway. Daniels had, 5 runs for 69 yards. That's 14 yards a carry.
Yeah.
That's pretty insane. There's just not a whole lot you can do against that. And so, giving up 242 yards rushing on the ground to Kansas, I think is going to be the big point of emphasis going forward. They only gave up 146 in the air. And Daniels burned them in the air, but at the end of the day, sometimes you're going to give up passing yards. That's fine. What you can't do in college is give up 242 rushing, especially not in the Big 12.
No.
A Big 12 team running on you like that is not great. So I think that'll be the first point of emphasis going forward from here. West Virginia's D-line has been really solid all season. This, of course, just kind of a big step back there. At the end of the day, we all have bad games. Everyone's got a bad game out there. This may just be that. It's a tough trip to Kansas. It's a tough game out there for you. But I think you'll be looking for a lot of improvement next week. I don't know, like Cam mentioned earlier, I don't know how many of you are expecting a win against Utah. Utah's team is far more talented than West Virginia's. So you may not even need to ask for a win here, but I think some sense of progress would go a long way.
Right. If it was a close game coming down to the wire and Utah wins on a final touchdown or something like that, and where you're in the game all 4 quarters and it's just a tough break or something like that, you can walk away happy. If it's another 41-10 loss, I don't think people would be walking out of Milan Puskar Stadium very happy after that, and for good reason as well. You don't want to see that in back-to-back weeks. But I'll kind of pose a question. Obviously, we've seen multiple quarterbacks come in this season at multiple different times. Is there a chance that we don't see Nico Marchiol starting against Utah next Saturday?
I would be surprised if that's the case. I mean, it's pretty clear that Henderson's got wheels. He still just can't throw. That third down rollout, he's got a guy open. He's got two yards of space in front of him. Just completely misses the throw. Just too many times that Henderson has missed throws this season. He can't do it. Wilkins didn't throw it all tonight, so we don't really know. Scotty Fox didn't play at all.
Yeah.
It's strange after coming in last week, but I don't know. So anyway, at the end of the day, I don't know if there's a better option than Marchiol. I would probably stick with him. At this point, I just thought he was good enough to be QB1, and I'm not sure that we've really seen any evidence of that, at least here tonight, of course. In the Pitt game you did. But, rivalry game, does it really translate over? I'm not sure that it does. So who would you take?
I would take Marchiol, kind of what you just said, but I could see a situation where they're starting Henderson and then Marchiol comes in. I think, now I don't know, obviously, personally, but I believe that the offense, the way that Nico Marchiol has played in the backyard brawl has gone such a long way that maybe this game is sort of like okay, we saw him play really well. Now he's kind of played a little off. Yeah. Let's see what he can do against Utah. And let's take it from there. But I don't know. He is the best passer by far, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Jalen Henderson walk out as the first quarterback.
Well, we have to see, because against Utah, I mean, Texas Tech was trying to run the ball, and they weren't really doing that well. And then their backup quarterback came in, and he just threw it all over the place and dominated against the Utes. So against Utah, you may really well need to get the ball up in the air to have any chance of winning the game. Utah's run defense, they've got first-round picks on that D-line in the NFL. I don't know what your West Virginia offensive line is going to do against that. It may not be pretty. So it may take some work there. Cam, at the end of the day, like you mentioned, all is not lost. This isn't a whole be-all, end-all for the season. It is just one game, and it sounds bad when you focus on just the one, of course. But going forward from here, is there much you can change? Is West Virginia just sort of stuck in this position the rest of the season? What do you think?
The only thing change-wise, I think they are kind of stuck with the injuries they have. Obviously, they do have some. Cam Vaughn is an explosive receiver. If you get him in space, you get him open, he could be a guy that can be a game changer for this team. Maybe figure out some ways to, or maybe in practice, figure out a way to get him a little open, get him away from certain really good defenders on the other side of the ball, and maybe he'll help you win. In the backyard ball, we saw that. Nico Marchiol throwing the ball all around the yard. Yep. If we can just have West Virginia play confident and be in their system, and Nico Marchiol playing well, then I don't really see a problem for West Virginia going forward. They might lose games. They might not be as good as everyone thought. But as long as they're not losing by 31 points consistently in Big 12 conference games, I think there's something you can take for next season. They are pretty much stuck, though, with their roster as of right now, with the injuries they have, and with the 5 quarterbacks that are all pretty much seen as able to get options, able to get out on the field this season.
Right. I think for me, it's pretty clear there's just not a lot of depth available here, a lot of high-quality depth available. Once your first stringers sort of go down, once your Fred Perry's out of there, your Jamori Robinson, all those kind of guys, there just isn't a whole lot left. And at the end of the day, it's Rich Rodriguez's first year, coming into West Virginia. West Virginia's in a bit of a time of transition from Neil Brown to him to NIL money to can they raise enough money? Can they do all this sort of stuff? It's just, we talk about the bigger picture here because it's just such a weird spot to be in. You think about all the teams around the Big 12, Texas Tech is dumping money down the chute to get people out there.
Yes.
Utah's got a clear identity. BYU, clear identity. Arizona State's completely reinvigorated. UCF may not be great, but they've got their longtime coach back there, a clearly established Orlando presence. All these teams in the Big 12 have a very clear identity in what they're going to do and, in a sense of financial backing from the school. And I don't really know that West Virginia can say that same thing. There's just a lot of progress left to be made on that front behind the scenes as well as what you see on the field. So I think that's why we talk about the bigger picture so much as part of this podcast here. It's just a really tough transition time, and the wins would go a long way because at the end of the day, college sports, it's a business. And you raise money for that, and West Virginia University is the big moneymaker in the state. It's the hospital system, it's the athletics, it's the brand, the Flying WV, it's everything here in West Virginia. And so, to come out looking like this, it's just, you lose to Ohio, you lose like this, we're not really sure where things are. It's just a tough spot to be in that could be totally fine in a couple of years, next year, whatever. It's just going to take some jumps to get there that we haven't really seen as of yet.
I think it's sort of what's going on, what we're seeing right now, I think sort of makes sense when you really zoom out and firing Neil Brown, having to take away an entire staff, but still kind of being clinging to that money, like still paying Neil Brown, obviously with the buyout and things like that, or buying out, taking other players off, and now having Rich Rodriguez come back and paying another staff. So all of that in one season with the whole NIL, and we are seeing the athletic department, the university take steps, like Planet Fitness, the gym of the West Virginia Mountaineers, things of that nature. They are, I think, taking steps, but like you said, they're in a tough spot. Being in that transition year of first-year head coach, having to basically kind of like lose some money when you take away a coach, fire him, bring a new guy in. The supplies, I think this year were a little bit low. Maybe next year will be maybe more because they won't have to be dealing with the transition of hiring a new staff and firing them as well. So I believe in the future, maybe next year, another year as well, West Virginia will continue to improve, getting more money, the sponsorships. I mean, how many times? I forget the latest one that they have, but you know what I'm talking about.
I think there was the official realtor of West Virginia.
So
I've never seen before, but hey, I mean, awesome.
I kind of think it's cool that they're taking those kind of steps.
Yeah,
because to compete in the Big 12 with all their big brands, it is tough. It is. They are kind of at a disadvantage when it comes to that. But I think they are trying. And if the talent is the main problem that they believe, they bring the talent in, and that will solve their problems, then I think West Virginia believes they're poised for a good position for next year. But if they believe it's the talent plus the system plus maybe some other things like that, then I don't think there is prime for a good future as people may think.
And we'll get a pretty clear sense of this pretty quickly because Neil Brown, what were his average recruiting ratings with West Virginia? I mean, they were mid-30s, right?
Yeah.
33, 35. I think there was a 27 one year. So, I mean, he brought in some really solid classes. West Virginia right now, according to 247 Sports, they've got 24 3-stars committed. That's 44th in the country. No 4-stars, no 5-stars. Ooh. So at the end of the day, is it all talent? No, of course, football is not built on all talent, like you know. I mean, West Virginia, one of the key examples of that in 2007 and the early years of Rich Rodriguez, it is not all talent, but to some large degree, it is.
Yes.
So I think we're going to find out really quickly here, is it going to turn into something like Neil Brown, where you bring in these really solid classes and they don't really amount to much? Mm-hmm. Or are you going to bring in these good classes and it just takes a year to set the system up or a couple years to get things ready to go, and then Rich Rodriguez develops them and they turn into these great players? I don't really know. Maybe it's just you need one great guy. You need one great Pat White out there.
Yes, you need one QB1. You need one guy that can lead your team. And like, if they can get that, I'm sure they'll be definitely ahead, farther ahead than they are now. But I think it's just figuring out the system that they want to run and running it properly through the right guys they have on the team. Right now is the best they can do, and they still have plenty more games this season to figure it out.
And one of the good things, too, about where the team is right now is a lot of these players who came in are from the lower leagues, right? Your FCS levels, you got a lot of guys from your Jacksonville States, your non-Power 4, your Group of 5 conference kind of things.
Yes.
And those guys, there are lots of talented people there. Now, the best ones, of course, hit pretty much immediately, right? You go to a big team, you play right away, you do well. A lot of those guys, though, do take some time to step up to especially the bigger speed of the Big 12 or the Power 4 conference. So it may just be that. It may just be building up to that kind of time, getting these players ready to go against the bigger and better competition. It's just hard when you see a guy like Nico Marchiol who's been here for years now, and you're just kind of struggling like that. It's just a tough thing to process when he's been here that long, and guys like that who have been here in the Big 12 before, been in these big games, you just can't get it done, and not just can't get it done, can't do anything against Kansas. That's tough. It's tough to stomach.
Yep. Definitely.
As we move on from here, of course, it all sounds like doom and gloom. It's not. It's just you look at it as a microcosm of one day. It's tough. But at the end of the day, you're 2-2. You beat Pitt. That's a great place to be.
Yeah.
And, from here, the sky is the limit. Maybe you come in. Maybe Utah comes in and they look terrible against Texas Tech, and maybe they look even worse against West Virginia. Your crowd goes crazy in Morgantown. You got 2 wins at home.
Hall of Fame
make
weekend.
It a third, right?
So maybe on Hall of Fame weekend they play up to that Hall of Fame level. So who knows? Crazier things have happened in college football. I would be interesting to see what maybe Vegas or people out there think what will happen in that game. I'll be interested to see. But when we move on, we'll obviously have the coverage of that game, and can't wait to see it.
And again, 2-2 is a lot better than I think. If you'd said before the season, would you take 2-2 after September? I sort of feel like 60-65% of the fans would have said yes.
Right.
And I think myself included, I would have said yes because I would have thought, Robert Morris, Ohio, okay. Hopefully you keep it close against Pitt, close against Kansas. And it's been a lot of up and down, of course, but 2-2 is not that bad. 1-3 is much worse.
Right.
2-2. You can see the foundation there. You can at least see something there. So I think going forward, still lots to build on. So.
Yep.
Cam Murray, Atticus, Pead, we thank you all for joining us here on the 5 Sports Show. Look out for us next week as we preview the Utah game and more. Can West Virginia bounce back? We're going to find out next week. But for now, thank you all for joining us. We hope you have a great night.